We begin our class with the idea of God's existence. Now, in 10th grade Bible, we talked about God's existence, and in 12th grade Bible, you'll talk about God's existence even more. But here in 11th grade Bible, we talk about it as well. The goal of faith isn't proof, it's trust and assurance. The goal of faith isn't proof, it's trust and assurance. I'll let that sink in a moment. Now, I want to say something about faith. All humans on planet Earth have faith. They believe or trust in something. All humans do. There are some people that say, oh, I'm not into faith and religion, I'm just into science. But that statement is not accurate because science cannot prove God's existence, but science also cannot disprove God's existence. So the atheist says, I believe God does not exist. And that is a faith statement, something that they trust in. Somebody that is a Christian bases their life on the Bible. They say, I believe that God does exist. Some people might put down your belief that God exists. But if they do, I would encourage you to just ask them in a nice way, well, what do you believe? And then follow that up with, how do you know that's true? It's easy to put down something else, but then, well, what is it that you believe in? Because all humans have faith. Now, knowing God. How do we know about God? This class is a class in theology and ethics, so the first part is theology. And technically, the word theology, theos, God, ology, study of, the study of God. So if you see this on a quiz or a test, theology means the study of God. However, we often use this term more broadly, and theology refers to many biblical topics that we find. Now, how can we know about God? I'm going to give you 4 ways in which we can learn more about God and about who He is. The first way is reason. My point here is not using reason to prove God exists, but it's using reason to show that belief in God is reasonable. It makes logical sense to believe that God exists. This is not a silly, stupid, or dumb idea that God exists. Now, in philosophy, there are 3 reasons for God's existence. The first one is the cosmological reason. This says that there must be a first cause. Something can't come from nothing. So, what caused everything? Was it matter has existed from all eternity? And are you going to believe that? Or are you going to believe that God exists? And it makes a lot more sense that there was an intelligent being that was the first cause, as opposed to matter or as opposed to absolute nothingness brought something. Second is the teleological argument. This is design with purpose. As we look at our world, we see that there is purposefulness in how things exist. It makes sense that there is a designer. Classic argument here is that if a hurricane went through an automobile junkyard, it would not come out with a nice car on the other side of the hurricane, meaning random motion is not going to produce increasingly greater order. So teleological argument. And then the moral argument. We have a sense of right and wrong and justice. Where does that come from? That comes from a sense of right and wrong and justice outside of ourselves. That would be God. And we all seem to have this as humans. We may disagree over the details, but we all seem to have this idea of a moral truth and compass, and that points to God. So, how do we know about God? First reason, and here are 3 arguments for reasoning out the idea that God exists. So we have reason. The second one is experience. We know about God through faith and God working in our life. So you may go to a youth group event, a summer camp, maybe you were at a particular church service and or chapel, and God worked in your life in a very deep way, and so you know, oh, God exists. Maybe you sensed and felt God's presence on particular occasions, like this is confirming to you, or just have an inner sense it's got to be this way, that God exists. So experience. Next is Scripture. And start of this would be the highest authority in terms of what we know about God. For instance, God's character. How do we know about all of the character qualities of God? It's not simply through reason and experience. It's because God has revealed it to us through His Word, through Scripture. And then lastly, tradition. This would be our church and other Christians. Now, before I end this video, please notice that if you take the first letter here, you get the acronym REST. So you should write that down because that may help you remember these 4 ways in which we can know God.